Today I'll show you how to check the oil level on a vehicle. Brand new engine oil is a clear brown color, and here's an example of it. It's nice and clear, almost kind of a honey looking, but it's not as viscous as honey is, but kind of has that look to it. That's brand new oil. As engine oil wears out, it gets darker in color and less transparent, and pretty soon it gets black and you can't see through it, and then really extreme wear in oil, it becomes chunky, kind of like a pudding or something like that. So oil sits at the bottom of the engine. As we fill it up right here, gravity will take it down to the bottom of the engine where it sits in what we call the oil pan, and it's a type of sump. It's kind of like where we store all of our engine oil. And we need to check the level of the oil in the oil pan, and we use a dipstick to do that. When the engine's on, the oil is picked up by a pump that's driven by the crankshaft, and it pressurizes it and sends it to an oil filter where it's cleaned out a little bit, and then it gets sent to all the engine moving parts, specifically like the crankshaft and pistons and connecting rods and all that. And then once it lubricates all those important mechanical parts, it gets squished out and it goes back to the oil pan, where again it gets picked up again, filtered again, and then gets pushed to those moving parts again. So oil is constantly being recycled. Checking oil periodically is really important. If we have too little oil in the oil pan, the engine will starve of lubrication and we'll have premature wear of our engine, which ends up really being, if we ruin our engine, that's a pretty expensive ordeal. The same thing goes if we overfill our engine with oil when we do an oil change, or add when we think we need to, or when we add too much. The engine oil can actually raise to the point in the oil pan where it comes into contact with the crankshaft, and when it comes into contact with the crankshaft, it will aerate and foam up, and then again, the oil pump wouldn't be able to pick up any foam like it's supposed to pick up oil, but it picks up foam, and it doesn't lubricate the parts, and then we end up starving the engine of lubrication. So we have some problems there too. So it's important to check it periodically. In order to get an accurate check of the engine oil, the vehicle has to be parked on a flat level surface. The second thing is the engine has to be off, and the third thing is it can be warm or it can be cold or what have you, but just make sure that before you check it, that the engine has been off for at least 5 minutes, okay? Dipsticks are generally pretty easy to find. They're right on the engine somewhere. This one's really easy because it's yellow and it goes right into the engine. But sometimes they're like little T-handles, or sometimes they're pieces of metal with curlicues, and they're not painted. But they can be kind of anywhere in the engine compartment that the manufacturers think would be a best place to do it. So once we've met all of our vehicle conditions, we're going to pull the stick out, and we're going to take a rag and we're going to wipe the stick off. And then we're going to put the stick back in, and we're going to make sure it's all the way on, it gets pushed all the way down onto the tube. And then we're going to pull it out again, hold it level. We don't want to hold it like this. We don't want to hold it like this, because that'll cause the oil to run down the stick or run up the stick and give us an inaccurate reading for sure. We're going to look at both sides. So I'm going to look at one side here and one side over here. And then I'm going to look at the marks that indicate low and full, okay? This gives us a great view of the stick and its markings. Notice that there's a mark down here, and then there's a mark up here. Seeing that this is the side that goes into the oil, this side is going to touch the oil first. So as it goes into the oil that's located in the oil pan, it's going to start to cover up the stick. And when I pull it out, the level in which it was at the oil pan is going to be marked on the stick. We call that the oil streak. And we want to look at the oil streak and where it is and compare it to those marks. If the oil level is at this bottom mark, it is low. If it's underneath the bottom mark, it's low. If it's in between these two marks, that means that the oil level is okay. If the oil level is up at this mark, it would mean that the engine oil is full. And if it's above that mark and starts going up the stick, that would indicate that the oil level is overfilled. Now let's actually get a good check of this oil. So I pull it out, I hold it level, and I start to try and find where the streak is. I think we can find the streak a little bit easier on this side. You can see where it starts at the bottom and it ends up to be about right there. That's where my streak is, that's where my oil level is, and that's, if I turn it around, it looks like on this side the streak is a little bit closer down to the middle between these two marks. Here's my low mark, here's my full mark, and the streak on this side is over here. I always want to read the low side. So to me, I evaluate this and I look and go, okay, is it low, okay, full or over full? And if it's right in between the lines, that would indicate that we're okay. Do I need to add any oil? No. Can I? Sure, I can add a little bit, but I don't want to add so much that I'm going to overfill it. Because remember, we can do just as much damage with overfull than we can underfull. And again, if I needed to add some oil, here's my oil cap. I open it up, I put a funnel in there, I add a little bit of oil. Usually I only want to add about a quarter of a quart at a time, especially if it's a smaller engine, smaller car. Again, I don't want to overfill, because if I overfill, I have to actually go underneath the car, drain some oil out using the oil drain plug, and it's kind of a mess. Notice that this one even gives us the type of oil that we need. We need an SAE 5W20. If it needed synthetic, it should say a synthetic on there. Sometimes it says see owner's manual. Sometimes you see this on the emission decal, but this vehicle makes it pretty easy for us. And make sure that when you're all done, the oil cap is on correctly, the dipstick is in all the way, because it could, if we leave any of that stuff off, it could just litter our engine compartment full of oil. That's about all I got. Good luck.